Today, we're going to talk with Paul Fowler. And one of the things that I found most interesting about Paul, who came on a sailing trip with us to the Virgin Islands in November, is that he goes on a trip every month, whether in the US or outside of the country. And his story was just so fascinating to me. We wanted to have a conversation with him and share it with you. So we're looking forward to talking with Paul Fowler. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Eric Orton.
I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us for a conversation on What Could Go Right today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So you and I, we went sailing in the Virgin Islands in November.
The British Virgin Islands.
The British Virgin Islands. And by the time this airs, I'll say 2025 because it will be 2026 when this goes out into the world. And so...
I have a question.
Oh, go right ahead.
So why did you decide to come on the trip with Eric? I know you're obviously traveling a lot. How did you go from hearing about it to deciding to do it?
I've never sailed a boat anywhere. I've sailed a catamaran across a small lake, and I thought an ocean would be a good experience, and a big boat with new people would be a new experience.
That's so fun. Those are the best reasons.
Oh, good.
And actually, before we get into some of your backstory, I'm curious, because you came as a solo traveler, which I think is great. Lots of people come with a friend or with a spouse or a significant other or, like a parent-child type thing. But you came solo, which I think is a brave move, especially to be on a boat with people that you don't know. And so I'm just curious, and you travel a lot solo, even though you're married, you and your wife we're all in Utah, and you live about 35 minutes from where we are.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious to hear about traveling a little bit solo, or maybe with our sailing trip, but then in general.
Okay. Well, as we've been married for over 40 years, and my wife taught school, and so she had summers off, and so we'd take a family vacation, but she would travel. She's gone all over the world with her mom and her friends, and of course she'd get 3 months off, and I would get like 2 weeks off. And so she did a lot of traveling by herself on tours and with her mom. And as I got older, where I got more vacation time, I liked to do things that necessarily she didn't like to do, like mountaineering. And so I go with my friends, go mountaineering. And she would go she likes more cultural tours, and I like more challenging physical trips. And so about a third of our trips we go separately, and then about 2/3 of them we go together. And so if you want to go solo, sometimes all your friends, they are not available, they can't get the time off, or they don't have the interest. And I found it's sometimes more fun to go by yourself, because within a day or two you'll meet somebody new or meet a new group of friends, and within 10 minutes, you're friends, and it's like you've known each other for a long time.
That's how it used to be when we were all kids, right? You go to the playground, and if you don't know anybody, say, hey, do you want to play? And you meet, and you all of a sudden you have some new friends. So, okay. First of all, I think, so you say, I love that you travel together some. It sounds like 2/3 of your travel is together as a couple, and then a third you kind of each branch off and do your own thing. And you mentioned just, diving in and making new friends, and you said in some ways it's extra fun. For you, what are some of the upsides of traveling solo?
You don't have to do a lot of planning, and here's an obvious one, and I did the Camino. People ask me if I ever got lost. I said, well, not that I'll admit to. Nobody was around to see me get lost and have to find my way back to the trail. And so I consider that doesn't count if somebody doesn't see it.
Nobody's there to see your mistakes.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, so the Camino is Camino de Santiago in Spain. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, we have a couple of friends that have done it, but it's a fairly famous pilgrimage hike. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, almost 500,000 people do it every year.
Every year? 500,000?
Every year, yeah.
Okay. So, a couple of questions. One is, you've obviously traveled to a lot of countries and done a lot of different kinds of activities. Eventually I want to get to sort of what your life was like before you retired, and you were able to travel as much as you do now. But before that, I'm curious, what are, it sounds like you've probably been to dozens and dozens of places. And I'm curious, what make your top list? What are in your top 10? And they don't have to be in any particular order, and you don't have to say 10. I'm just kind of curious some of your highlights.
Some of your faves.
Yeah.
Yeah, people ask me what's my favorite trip, and I say, "Oh, my next one."
You don't have to say
That sounds like
you don't have to say sailing in the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
But yeah, the next trip. We're big believers in what we call the gift of anticipation. And whenever you've got something booked, you've got something to look forward to. And that's a pretty special and powerful thing.
Yeah, yeah. In mountaineering, sometimes planning and preparing and training for it is as much fun as the trip. Sometimes more fun if you get into really cold weather, bad food, and you can't sleep, and you think, oh, the planning was actually a lot more fun than the actual trip.
We call that type 2 fun, where it's not so fun while you're doing it, but it's fun when you look back and
Oh,
learn from it.
yeah, I've been on trips where my wife says I won't talk about it for 2 months. Then after that 2 months, I won't shut up about it.
Okay, and
That makes
remind me the you were telling us a story about it's the second highest peak, not K2, but
Aconcagua, probably.
Aconcagua. Yeah, that's in.
It's on the border between Chile and Argentina.
Okay, all right. So I want to come back to that, but yeah, keep going with some of your highlight trips. So specifically, so your next one is your favorite trip, of course.
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that the Camino is on there because you said as much that how impactful it was for you.
That was when we were in our late 20s and first got married before we had kids. We went to Europe and traveled north as far as Moscow. This is in the mid 80s, and my wife is friends with somebody who married a fellow who had escaped from the Soviet Union. And so we were on this tour, and we snuck away from our tour group and contacted this fellow's parents who are still in Moscow. And we went and spent an evening with him. And this is at the height of the Soviet Wars. Soviet people were really obsessed with American culture. And I had 3 pair of Levi's with me. Of course, one I was wearing, but I gave them 2 pair of Levi's, and they actually traded those 2 pair of Levi's for a car.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. These are Levi's funds, which were just
Premium.
like, yeah, premium to them.
still cool.
I'm curious, can you actually walk down the streets of Moscow wearing Levi jeans without getting arrested? Because that just sort of says, hey, I've been dealing in the black market. But I guess if you trade it for a car draws less attention than some Levi's.
Yeah, about every hour somebody approached me and wanted to buy my pants from me. And by then I had 1 pair of pants, so
You say, I could trade you, but I can't sell.
yeah,
I gotta have something to be decent.
yeah. But we actually eventually got him in touch with Amnesty International, and they got him out of the country.
Your friend's parents.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, kind of a cool travel story.
Yeah, that really is.
You said this was the late 80s?
Mid 80s.
Okay, so a few years before the Berlin Wall came down and things started to change big time, but still.
And I'm thinking no GPS, no translator apps, no digital currencies.
No, we had gone into Berlin and then crossed into East Germany, and then up through Moscow, and then back through Finland.
Mm.
And we were some of the first Americans to do that.
Incredible, incredible. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Germany and visited Berlin when the wall was up. And so the Cold War was a very real thing in my life.
Yeah.
And I visited East Berlin when it was very communist. And so, yeah, I remember all that vividly. And I just think traveling now in some ways feels like it's kind of cheating in the sense that, we can Google Translate. Visa and MasterCard are accepted almost anywhere around the world. If you don't have the currency, you just go to an ATM and you can get it with your debit card or what have you. And we have Google Maps and you can get an international plan. But you were doing this at a time when it was its own kind of art form, when you had paper maps and you didn't have any way to just reach out to people. You're putting coins into a payphone at this point, if you want to call someone.
Yeah. Well, that's funny you bring that up. Cuba's like that. You don't have cell phone service, you don't have electricity, you don't have running water. Um, Cuba right now is worse off than Soviet Union was 40 years ago.
Well, and for those that don't know, you just got back from Cuba on Saturday, right?
Friday.
Friday.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
Friday.
So yeah, you're pretty up to the minute.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because it sounds like, you're saying you like things that are maybe a little more physically strenuous. As you're telling us about these trips that are in your tops, it sounds like the human interactions that you're having are the things that you're bringing up. You're not saying, oh, the view from this peak was just like life changing, or, we saw that in Moscow, we got to see these churches, or, it's like the things that you're bringing up are like, we went into somebody's home, we made a difference in somebody's life, or they impacted us, or even Camino. It's like, I don't know what the transformation was, but you're like, that experience changed me as a person, right? It isn't like, oh, I had great paella. So I'm curious, like, about, what you're looking for in travel.
Yeah, I didn't realize it till you said that, but a lot of it is the human interaction. Like being on the Camino, it's like 500 miles of walking, and that's part of it. But every day you'd meet somebody new, and you had plenty of time to spend with each other, and you're walking. Everybody's walking the same direction and roughly the same speed, and they would you start talking to them, and they'd tell you their life story, and over the next couple of days, things would unfold. It's really quite interesting to hear everybody's life story, and I found the quickest way to get a conversation going was ask them how their feet feel, and they would give you
People always
10
want to
minutes.
answer that question.
Yeah, they give you a 10-minute discussion on what they're doing to mitigate the blisters and how they're fighting this or how they're fighting that. And everybody had their own method. And then after that, they start telling you all about their life and why they're on the Camino. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Camino takes how many days, weeks to walk?
I did it in 45 days, but I intentionally took it slow because I was having such a good time. The last week, I slowed down because I didn't want it to end. And I took rest days in the bigger towns and look around the town and go to the cathedrals and hang out in the town squares.
Okay, well, let's come back to the Camino. Let's keep going with it. So one of your top trips was going in the mid 80s up north into Moscow and Finland. Keep going. What are a few other highlights for you?
Everest Base Camp was astounding. The scenery there was just spectacular. Cornices 200 or 300 feet thick. The mountains just filled the sky. The Himalaya are the youngest mountain range in the world, and they're still growing. They grow about 5 centimeters a year as the Indian continent is being forced underneath it.
They're going up. They're having their growth
They're going up.
Plate tectonic.
Well,
as opposed to the Appalachians, which are just getting old and ready to retire.
yeah. And what's happening is the Everest is so heavy that it's actually pushing down on the mantle on the Earth. And so it's just about at the maximum height that the mantle can support. But it's eroding. All the mountain around it is eroding, so it's actually getting lighter. The reason why the peak of Everest is not eroding is because it's covered with snow. And so that protects it from erosion.
Okay. Yeah, that Everest is obviously iconic, but I love that you kind of learn a little bit about the geology and the history of places, because I think that's probably a really rich part of travel is just understanding what you're seeing, what you're experiencing.
And this is something else about Everest that is a common misconception I found. That most people think a Sherpa is somebody who carries your load up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And a Sherpa is anybody who lives in the Khumbu Valley. Their last name is Sherpa. And if you live in the valley next to them, they're all called Gurkhas. And so this is a common misconception, is that not all Sherpas are porters, and not all porters are Sherpas.
That's a good distinction.
Okay. I've always thought that Sherpa was a job description, but that's just
their last name.
That's just the people that live there that have traditionally been the ones helping you port your gear up the mountain.
Yeah.
Everybody just got a little bit smarter.
All right. Well, I'm smarter,
Okay.
Paul.
Yeah, some Sherpas are guides, some Sherpas are cooks, some Sherpas don't climb the mountains.
I just watched a YouTube video right before my recent sail trip where it was like some guy, has sponsored by Red Bull or something, and he climbs Everest accompanied by a Sherpa, and he skis a porter and skis down it for the first time, skis from the summit of Everest down back to the valley. And it was a pretty cool video to watch. And I appreciated that he went very slow at the beginning and made sure that his Sherpa porter made it down, below the death zone before he kind of peeled off and went solo on skis. Because it's all well and good to do your sponsorship video and get views and things like that, but in the end, taking care of your climbing partner and each other's lives is even more important, in my opinion. And so anyway, it was just a beautiful chance for me to see the whole mountain in the course of a 30-minute edited video, and it really is stunning. And I always think of Everest as sort of just crowded and congested with rush hour traffic of mountaineers. What was your experience there?
Yeah, there's a lot of myths about Everest, and you've got this huge mountain range that extends through 3 countries, and you've got a ribbon about 10 feet wide that people walk on. And it used to be that when I was there, like one of the prominent climbers would become the de facto mayor, and he would say, okay, this group you go from May 1st to May 3rd, and then this group you get it from May 3rd to May 5th. This group you go after us, and then this group you go after us. And people would divide up their time on the mountain and help each other, but their summit attempt would be just based on whose turn it was. And if you hit the weather good, then you had a good experience. But now with the weather forecasting is so hyper accurate, they can tell within 15 minutes whether the wind's going to blow or not. And so everybody wants to go, they get in position, then everybody wants to go on the same day, or within a couple hours. There's groups that just wait out the first weather window, and they go in the second weather window, and they virtually have the mountain to themselves. So it's the mountain rewards patience.
Well, I like that. The mountain rewards patience. And yeah, if you can be up there and just say, hey, I don't have to get on the first bus is a little crowded, I'm going to wait for the next one. We would experience that all the time living in New York City.
Oh,
Subway comes in and it's packed, and we're like, you know what? It's not even worth it. Let's just wait for the next one.
5 minutes later.
10 minutes later. Yeah, 5, 10 minutes later, the next one comes along and it's completely empty, and you have the subway to yourself. Yeah. Everyone gets a seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people, they see Everest being real crowded. Well, that was their experience. But it's only crowded for maybe 1 or 2 days out of the...
Okay, you're renewing my hope in the Himalayas. I appreciate that, because I've kind of written it off. I was like, oh, maybe K2 or something like that. But Everest, I've never had interest because for that reason.
Because of what you thought, yeah.
Yeah, but that's, and I've read the books and about, and seen kind of the problems with waste disposal, like just garbage and stuff like that.
Well, that's another myth. Most mountaineers are dedicated environmentalists. Mm-hmm. You get the exception. It's like going to a national park and thousands of people are be there, and like 4 people are leaving their trash around, and it degrades the experience for everybody. But you can't say that the national park is loaded with trash. It's just there's a small percent of the people that do that. And they're actually, most groups that go out to Everest now bring down more weight than they take up. And they're actually cleaning up the mountain.
Oh, that's beautiful. You would actually go up just to do that.
I would go just to carry a load of garbage down. I mean, I'm not trying to like virtue signal or anything like that, but I just think that is actually really great to hear, Paul. So thank you.
Yeah. People think like you. Although I get asked a lot, why do they leave the bodies up there? And it's just real. There's 3 people who have died trying to retrieve bodies. And most mountaineers know how expensive and how dangerous it is to get their body off. And most of them say, if I die up there, just leave me there. Don't let somebody else die trying to bring a dead body off the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to bring a body off a mountain, you go up there with a body bag. You put this body that's essentially freeze-dried in a body bag, drag it over rough ground for 3 weeks. You can imagine what it looks like by the time you get it off the mountain.
This is making a sailing trip to the British Virgin Islands sounds like such a good option.
Okay. Yeah, when you put it that way.
No, but it's a beautiful place. It's cool to know some of the geology, but it is hopeful in humanity to think, oh, people are actually cleaning it up, and while there is a problem, it's maybe not as big as you think, and maybe it's getting smaller.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's great. And okay, and so I kind of want to hit a couple of other things here because you also do river cruises with your wife. And remind me your wife's name?
Dawn.
Dawn. And if she's in the room or if she
Yeah.
pops in, please have her just poke her head in to say hi. It'd be fun to meet her.
Hey, Dawn. Dawn. Okay. No, I guess we're not. She was in the room here a minute ago.
Okay, well, if she comes back, tell her
She's
to.
traveling alone.
Yeah, this is one of those times when you're both traveling alone. Because she's also fascinating from what you told me, and I want to hear maybe a little bit about her.
This might be a good time to ask, since you're going to talk about traveling together, like what are some of the benefits of traveling together? Because there are some parts that are easy when you're nimble and moving solo, but there are some parts that are nice about being together. So what have you noticed in your 2/3 of your travels?
She has a lot more patience than I do, and if I can't find my way, I get a little frustrated, and she will calm me down, and say, "No, it's okay. We'll find our way. We'll just keep walking, even if we're going the wrong way." She's okay with that, and it bothers me if I walk the wrong way too far.
Sometimes it's good to have a buddy to help keep you level.
So like, oh, look what we got to see that wasn't on our path.
Yeah,
Because I know you mentioned you and her did a river cruise through, I can't remember where, but it was sort of like a bicycle river. You'd alternate between biking and river cruise. Like you would cycle and then the boat would catch up with you and you'd hop on and then sort of
bike and barge in Netherlands.
bike and barge in the Netherlands. Doesn't that sound fun?
Yeah, that sounds fun.
There you go.
Because sometimes we run into the same thing where we love to travel together, but we also have different interests, and I'm a little bit more mountaineering, rock climbing, and you have a love for museums and or not. Maybe I don't even know you.
Where did you come up with that idea? Anyway, different levels of interest in different things for sure.
But like bookstores and libraries and anyway, maybe I should stop being a
I'm
pig.
good. Yeah, I'm good for about one museum a day, and then after that, I want to do something else.
Okay, so let's go back. First of all, I want to talk about your business if you don't mind, because before, you've obviously been traveling since you were young and, young married couple. And since you've retired, you've had the time and ability to do a lot more, kind of an accelerated schedule. But I think it's worth talking about your entrepreneurship, because I remember you and I were walking on the beach at Anegada in the Virgin Islands, and you kind of told me how you ran a business where you would import you had rubber products. You were growing rubber in Indonesia, I think, and then you were processing it and having it shipped to the US and it was a manufacturing business, correct?
Correct.
So yeah, I'd be curious to hear that and how that,
Like as an adventure.
I think entrepreneurship is an adventure. And so, that journey.
Okay. Yeah, you want, trying to think. It started with when I was in college. I was working for a company that was downtown Salt Lake, part of a big corporation. And that division was bought out by a larger corporation, and they mostly built pumps. And they had quite a few lines they built for the mining industry. This other company saw that they were making more than 100% of their profit from their pump line, and the valves and hose was really not making much money, taking up a lot of valuable space, and they wanted to sell it. And I was in a position where I could buy it from them. And so I built a building down in Lehigh, and Lehigh at the time was a small town. They probably had 3,000 or 4,000 people. And I bought a horse pasture, but it was close to the freeway. So I was hoping, well, someday this land will be very valuable. Mm-hmm. And built the building there and moved the company there.
You were buying off the portion of that wasn't profitable for them, that they were selling.
Correct. And it was complementary products, because we used a tire cord that would skim rubber on, and rubber that came from Indonesia. And then it would be processed in LA, and then we'd bring it to Salt Lake on refrigerated trucks. And with a calendar, would skim it onto the tire cord. And then with the tire cord, would put it on a large mandrel, like you do a barber pole, would spiral it on, and put the number of layers on, depending on the application, the type of ends that go on the end, whether it's a metal end or flange. And then those, also with that same technology, we were building pneumatically operated pinch valves where with the tire cord would skim rubber on it and then put it in a press and make the diaphragms that go inside a metal valve, and you'd hit the outside of it with air, and it would close down around the fluid that's flowing. And if you got a rock or any type of material in there, it would close up around it without damaging the valve, and you get a good seal.
Was this an like if for people that may not be mechanically inclined, where would this show up in their lives? Is this a business to business kind of product, or would it ever show up in a consumer product?
No consumer products. It goes into the mining industry where they use it for mineral processing. After they dig up the ore, they reduce the ore from, it's probably 2 or 3% copper. They reduce it down to eventually 100% copper, and they need to move it through the mill and regulate how much sulfuric acid and other products to break it down to the molecular level. And so you use these rubber-lined hoses and rubber-lined valves to prevent it from destroying the metal casing.
Okay. So most people aren't going to be familiar with the functionality of your product, but it shows up anytime they have copper in their lives. It's thanks to the process that, you're one of the providing some of the equipment to help make copper available as a material.
Correct.
And then at some point you're running a successful company, and then you're not because the company goes bad, but because you no longer own it. So I'm curious, and this was over years, decades?
Yeah, decades.
So you run your company for a few decades. You have a building down by the freeway, and I'm curious, fast forwarding in time, under what circumstances do you decide to sell your company?
Well, we were kind of getting left behind on the technology. There were a couple of companies that developed a frozen arrested cure rubber product that was much denser than what we were using, because it was so dense that it would resist degradation by chemical and slurry friction loss. Because it was denser, we could put it in our product and it would outlast what we were using probably 2 or 3 to 1. So with this longer life, you could charge 2 or 3 times as much for the product. And it wasn't a lot more expensive to put it in our product. And so we were trying to convince them to sell us this proprietary product, and of course they wouldn't. And we said, well, is money an issue? Give us your price. Everybody's got a price.
At what point is it worth it to you? Because at some point it is.
Yeah. And once they figured out what we'd already figured out, well, for a slightly higher cost of material, you can sell our product for a lot higher price. And it's a lot better for the end user because they don't have to stop the mill and change out the item, change out the products. It'll last 2 or 3 times as long, so less maintenance, less downtime for them. And so you can charge more for the product. Well, once they figured that out, they figured, well, we'll just buy your company and then we'll capture that additional profit.
We'll keep our proprietary material and we'll just acquire you instead of you acquiring us.
Yeah, or acquiring their product. And so they bought it, and we negotiated for about a year, and then they just took over. They kept all the employees, all the equipment, same customers. It was a pretty good transaction.
I love it. And I also, for us, I'm interested in the fact that you negotiated for a year, because we've been looking at buying a business for a couple of years, and we've been, I would say, in negotiations on one particular business for over a year, and we don't know if it'll ever come to fruition. We don't know if we want it to anymore, but just good to know that sometimes it doesn't happen in a month or a week. That's the mountain rewards patience, as you said.
That's right.
Yeah, they were wondering, well, is there some catch to this deal? And I was wondering, well, is there some catch here? And we kept negotiating and exchanging information, and it worked out well for both of us.
That's great.
And I was in my I was retirement age, so
And what is I'm just curious, what is retirement age, if you don't mind me asking?
close to 70.
Okay, so you're close to 70. Can I ask how long ago this was?
This was 3 years ago.
Okay, so fairly recently.
Yeah.
Okay, so up until 3 years ago. And is that when you started your once a month trip kind of schedule?
Yeah. Yeah. There was about 2 or 3 months where I just didn't do anything. It was kind of, I just hung around the house and my wife.
You're like, the business is sold. I don't have to show up at the office anymore. All my employees are being well taken care of. That's got to be a disorienting feeling in some ways. I'm just curious, what was that like after having sold your company after so many decades to just go from 60 to zero in terms of load and speed and all that?
Yeah, that's a very good question because that was quite an adjustment for both my wife and I. She would talk to people and say, "Yeah, he's always at home. What is going on here?" But I found it was a lot of fun to go to the grocery store and I could buy things, anything I wanted. I didn't have to just rely on what's in the house, eat that. And I found that there are things that I like that nobody else likes. And so I kind of went through that cycle. I got my lawn in immaculate condition. For a couple months, I probably had the best lawn in the neighborhood. And I realized, yeah, that's not as fulfilling as you think it is.
And is that when you started your rhythm of starting to do trips more regularly?
Yeah, that's exactly the. After about a month or two, I said, let's start planning something. And that's when we started the rhythm of, well, we'll plan this and plan that. And pretty soon the plan started, the planning phase was over and we started into the doing phase. And there's some of the tours groups we've been with, they have a last minute specials. And if their tour isn't filled or somebody will cancel, they'll send emails out to people that have been on those on trips with them. Say, yeah, you can go for half price if you're ready to go next week. And we did a couple tours like that, and that was a lot of fun. You can go quite cheaply, and you go places you hadn't planned, and that seems to be more fun because you're
Yeah, it's a surprise.
surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fun. That is fun. And it sounds like it's been a fantastic 3 years since selling your company in terms of just seeing the world and having experiences together and solo. Is Dawn still teaching?
No, she retired.
So she's been retired for a while.
Yeah, and most of those time she was working part-time, and she'd share a contract with her friends, and they'd take turns taking care of each other's kids. And she got a full year's credit towards her retirement for working part-time. And so she did some real good long-term planning.
Well, hey, and as we I don't want to miss a chance to ask you about Aconcagua
Okay.
and your experience there, which you shared with me on the boat and with all of us on the boat, and also how that connects with your pilgrimage on the Camino.
Mountaineering's kind of crazy. You start off on a small mountain and you get together with your friends and you kind of push each other, and pretty soon there's the seven summits is the highest summit on each of the seven continents. And you do Kilimanjaro, which is one of the easiest ones, but it's still 19,000 feet. And so we performed well there. And then so we went to Mount Blanc, the highest mountain in Europe. And we hit the weather real good. And so we had a good experience there, summited there. We'd both been to Everest Base Camp before we got together. And then, so the next logical step is Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain in North and South America. It's higher than Denali. It's the second highest of the seven summits. And it's the highest mountain that they climb without the use of oxygen. And we thought our skills were up to date. I'd done Rainier and Grand Prismo, some of the other mountains around. We'd both done Rainier, and so we thought we were up to that. And I get up there, and I get up to base camp, and I look around, and Alex Honnold's there. I've forgotten, a lot of the great mountaineers in the world are all there. And the reason why is because the climbing season there is in January, and so all the great climbers in the world, they go there and they climb that. And I tell people it's like walking into a gym and LeBron James is there. And I might be in the wrong gym.
Or the right gym.
Yeah. well, I'm going to get my butt kicked here, is what I was thinking. And so I get, and we start carrying loads up to the next camp, and I get 24 hours away from the summit, and I get cerebral edema. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I got up and I'm trying to take the tent down, and I'm having a hard time. But there's a 50-mile-an-hour wind, and it's like 20 below zero, so I got gloves on, and I thought, well, yeah, you should have a hard time taking the tent.
Yeah, who wouldn't, right?
Yeah, and I thought, well, I'm not feeling 100%. But I thought, well, as soon as I start walking, I'll generate heat. I'll start breathing hard. I'll feel better. And after about an hour, I just couldn't take another step, and I sat down. And that's a real signal to people. You don't sit down because that transfers heat to the ground.
Yeah.
And they came over and talked to me, and they said I was slurring my words, but I thought I was being real articulate because I could tell what they were doing, and you don't want to show that you're breaking down. And so I said, yeah, we got to get him off the mountain. And as I'm coming off the mountain, I don't remember this. People are telling me that, but I started taking my clothes off. And they said, yeah, this guy's really in trouble. And he called for a helicopter. And helicopter rescues above base camp, like 14,000 feet, are really rare. And the wind is, and at 50-mile-an-hour winds, it's almost unheard of. That pilot came up and started circling, and he circled about 8 times, and just about that time, the wind just died down just enough. And I remember they said, go over there and get on your knees, because they didn't want me wandering around, and they wanted me low enough so I wouldn't interfere with the helicopter. And I remember thinking, okay, lean into the mountain. If you pass out, that way you don't start tumbling down the mountain. You'll pass out and fall uphill. About that time, the helicopter landed, and they just grabbed me and just threw me inside the helicopter. And he takes off. And I thought he was going to go down to base camp, but they took me out to the edge of the park, put me in an ambulance, and eventually I got into town. And it took me 3 days before I could walk in a straight line. But I was at 2,200 feet, and it was warm, and I was getting good food, and I think mostly came out of it. But they do 4 expeditions a year. We were number 3, and both 1 and 2 had fatal accidents on it. And I think, as tragic as that is, I think that's what saved me, because they were really hyper aware of when I started acting funny. They knew what to do. They got me off the mountain. And I've talked to other people who are high altitude experts, and they said, yeah, once you get cerebral edema, you need to get below 9,600 feet. And that's why they didn't take me to base camp. They just took me to the park. And I think that's why I was able to recover. My wife says my memory wasn't very good for about 6 months, that I'd talk about something and then I'd repeat myself. She said after about 6 months, I fully recovered. But wow. I still had some PTSD over this. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and replay people sliding off the mountain to their demise. I was having a hard time coping with it. And then I thought, well, I don't want to have to live with this the rest of my life. I don't want to get back up on a mountain, because we talked about what happened on the mountain, what went wrong, what we could do next time. We thought, well, if we try again, maybe we'll have a success on the mountain and we can put this behind us. But I thought that's not really a good idea, because you get cerebral edema once, you're more susceptible to it. And then
right, like a concussion.
Yeah, concussion protocol. And I thought, well, I'll just go on a nice long walk, eat good food, sleep in a bed, talk to people. So the Camino is going to be the perfect thing. And I did it in a leisurely manner. Some people were doing like 30 kilometers a day and really pushing themselves. And I did about half that. Just had a good time. I knew people all the time, lots of good experiences, lots of new experiences every day. And about halfway through, the nightmares quit. And I think that just getting lots of good memories just packs down the bad memories. And all you can remember is 45 days of good memories.
That's beautiful. I love that.
I remember you saying on the boat that it was kind of like having a glass with dirty water, and you just poured a bunch of clean water into it, and it sort of flushed out the bad
Eventually
stuff.
filled up with all clean water.
I don't know if I'm remembering that right, but that's sort of the visual I have. It
Yeah.
seems like that was kind of, you were just able to pour in as many, just replace all those traumatic thoughts and memories with really, reassuring, safe, good memories. And that was a healing thing.
I love that. Maybe this is a good time for my question, because I love that you didn't say like, okay, I'm just stopping and I'm going to go back to puttering around the house.
And working on your lawn.
You're like, I already know where that leads. Like, I know I need to keep moving. But so my question for you is, why is it so important to have something to look forward to? Like you said, the next trip is always your favorite trip.
Good question. And I know people that are fighting depression, and some of them go down a route where they go to therapists or they try drugs, or a lot of ways to deal with depression. And my wife tells me, well, just plan a trip, plan a big elaborate trip, and then execute it. And you'll feel better planning it, looking forward to it. And then when you're on the trip, you're going to have a good time, and then you're going to have 6 months of nice memories, and do that once a year, and you'll come out of your depression. And I think that's a good prescription for life.
Yeah, it's true. I love that. And I have read that when you have something to look forward to, people live longer who have something to look forward to, whether that's a big trip that you've planned, or like in these blue zone cultures like the Mediterranean cultures or in Okinawa, where they have built a really strong sense of community and they're active in each other's lives. And so when you get to go on a trip and meet new people and be active in each other's lives, that's just a double dose of good stuff. So that's my final question. Thanks for indulging me.
No, that's a really great question. And
very insightful to sum it up like.
Paul, it has just been so delightful to talk with you. And first of all, thanks for coming sailing a couple months ago. And thanks for sharing your stories with me then and with the whole group on the boat. And then coming back and kind of going another layer deeper and sharing it a little bit more widely, because I think in a lot of ways you inspire me. And if you're inspiring me, I want to share it with other people so that they can get the benefit of your goodness and your wisdom and your insight. And so thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Okay. It was my pleasure. And thanks again for making that trip available. You made everybody safe, you made everybody feel comfortable, but you also, anybody that wanted to learn or whatever level they wanted to go to, you brought them to that level.
Well, that's kind of you to say. And so for our listeners, whether you're looking to do Aconcagua, Everest, what was called a barge and bike tour, wherever you're at, give yourself something to look forward to, and who knows, what could go right. Thanks for listening. Before we wrap up, I just want to let you know what is available through our sailing update. We are going to be going to the Bahamas April 13th through the 18th. 13th through the 18th of April. At the moment, there are 2 cabins available. There are a number of people that are checking schedules, time off work and flights and stuff. But at the moment, 2 cabins are available. So if you'd like to join us, that will be our last spring trip to the warm water areas of the Bahamas. In June, we are going to Italy, June 6th through the 13th. We've got 4 cabins available. So I would love to fill that boat and have you part of that trip. It's a super fun one. If you haven't listened to our recent episode on Italy and why it's such a great trip, go back a few episodes and check that one out. Then July, we have 2 sold out Greece trips. Croatia in August is sold out. September, we're probably going to have to switch things up for our Norway trip due to boat availability. So stay tuned on that. What that means is that we will probably open up another week for a trip in the Mediterranean, Adriatic Sea area in September. So just stay posted there. At the moment, moving on, we have October 5 through 10, we're going to be in Mexico. We've got 1 solo female spot left. It's a fantastic trip. It's one of my favorite. So October 5th through the 10th, we're going to be in the Sea of Cortez, Mexico, near Baja Peninsula, and 1 solo female spot. We're back in the Bahamas later this year, November 9th through the 14th. The trip is sold out except for 1 solo female spot. November 9th through the 14th in the Bahamas. And then December 7th through the 12th, we'll be in the Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands. The trip is sold out except for 1 cabin, which accommodates 2 people, and 1 solo male spot. So that is the lineup. The other thing that I'll say is that we are looking to do a trip specifically for people with Down syndrome. We would like to do it in the spring, April, May, maybe early June. And so if you know somebody or a loved one in your family, or you know somebody that would want to go sailing, it needs to be somebody with Down syndrome and then somebody that could travel with them. And we're going to be sponsoring part of the cost for that trip. There is still a cost to go, obviously, but we would love to have 4 people with Down syndrome and their traveling buddy to join me and my wife, Emily, and our daughter, Lily, who has Down syndrome, and somebody else that will be joining us to help out with the trip. So if you're interested, let us know. We haven't picked a specific date or destination yet, but it's going to be pretty close to the US, and it's going to be April, May, possibly into June. So we're looking for interested people. And then once we know who's interested, we'll figure out a date and a time. But that is the update, and look forward to welcoming you aboard soon. We are always happy to tell you about our trips, but we want you to hear from people who have actually come out and gone sailing with us. So here is a takeaway from somebody who has gone sailing with us recently. Hey, Amanda.
Okay, well, I think I shared this with somebody earlier, but my biggest fear coming was that I would love it and I would have to figure out how to fund the time and the money to come on more trips. I too can be very spontaneous, and at this stage of my life, just life's too short. Just do it with fear, but just do it. The one thing I will take away, other than hopefully 9 new friends, yeah, hopefully I will remember the saying that somebody shared, but so your heart's in the right place, your mind's in the right place, everything will be okay when you're okay with everything.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And I would say, don't think about doing this trip, just book it. Just do it. Yep.
Well, fine.